everybody. I hope you guys are having a rich experience here with all the different activities that are happening in this space, from the negotiations to the events, and even the green zone, where I hear there's additional events there. With that, may I invite our panelists to take their seats, please, and then we'll proceed with our program tonight. Okay, again, welcome everybody. Maybe I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Xavier Urbai Matsutaro. I am from the Office of Climate Change, housed in the Office of the President from the government of Palau. And I am here with great pleasure to be your moderator today. And before we start off, I would like to recognize Secretary General Dr. Charles Lee from Taiwan ICDF and Mom Loves Taiwan Association for co-hosting this event. So for a bit of background, food, it's essential. It's the thing that we need in order to survive, to stay healthy. Sustenance is life. And with that, the focus of this side event is to explore the importance of climate resilient agri-foods with the changing weather systems that we are faced with, but also emphasize the significance of healthy and productive ecosystems in achieving resilience. And this is done in several ways. It's utilizing the integration of indigenous knowledge, who are familiar with the crops at hand. But with the changing climate and as the environment is evolving, we're going to require technological solutions. So you have a blend of the two to ensure that you have climate resilient food systems. And if you do it right, then you would have the strengthening of the food networks to ensure that the sustainability of your food systems are ensured. And to kick off, I would like to then introduce to our distinguished speakers here. First, we have Minister Stephen Victor. He is the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Environment. And then from USA, United States of America, we have Michael Schiffer, who is the Assistant Administrator of United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID. Welcome. Then we have next to Michael, Ming Hong Yen, Director of Technological Cooperation, Department International Cooperation and Development Fund, otherwise known as Taiwan ICDF. I'm really sorry if I say it, it's the last name, but the first name is Eleng Kazak Ngil Jan. Oh, you made it sound so easy. But she is from the William S. Richardson's Law School from University of Hawaii. Welcome, good to see you, and have you join our panelists. And lastly, we have Ichan Cheng, Deputy Secretary General of the Environmental Quality Protection Foundation, otherwise known as EQPF. So welcome our panelists to this discussion tonight. Okay, so to start off, maybe we'll start more at the policy level. We have our government high-level official here, Minister Stephen Victor, who will talk about Palau's experience on how governments can create, support, and promote an enabling environment to build climate-resilient food systems with indigenous knowledge. So with that, I would like to hand over the floor to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Xavier, and good evening, Ambassador Lee, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about Palau's experience and efforts in developing resilient agri-food systems to meet our food security in the face of climate change. In 2021, Palau developed its food systems pathway. In the pathway, it identified opportunities as well as key challenges that Palau as a nation face with respect to food security. One of the key lessons that emerged from the food systems pathway is Palau's heavy reliance on imported foods. We import over 80% of the food that we eat. So as a nation, that became very much more pronounced during COVID-19, when there were concerns with respect to shipping and transportation. I know many of us in this room felt that fear within the places where we live. I don't know for some reason why when one of the first things that ran out of the shelves in the stores, not only in Palau but elsewhere, were toilet papers. So I don't know why. The first thing that ran out were toilet papers and mayonnaise. But that sort of gave scare to Palauans and that they will run out of food because they were so reliant on going to the stores and buying rice, canned meat, frozen chicken, pork, beef, and whatnot. So we started to see emergence of young people going into gardening, farming, and fishing. And within our food system pathway, one of the challenges that was also identified was lack of interest in young people within fishing and farming. So this gave us an opportunity to also explore how we use the situation at hand to try and figure out how we re-engage with young people, because they will be the ones who will need to produce the food for themselves in the future. So while we have an immediate need of addressing food shortage at times, it's really the future generations' food security that we need to think about. How are we addressing the impacts of climate change, and how are we setting up policies to enable more resilient food production that contribute to net zero food production. Taiwan's ICDF has been working in Palau, supporting Palau government for about 40 years. And in that process, they were looking at what type of crops are suitable to be grown in Palau. So we've had that experience of knowing what type of vegetables and root crops we can grow in Palau. And in the last 5 or so years, Taiwan's ICDF has focused on livestock and sustainable aquaculture. we didn't really think about all this effort in the context of developing resilient food systems then, but more recently in doing our food systems pathway, we've identified that there are enabling technologies, enabling capacities that has been brought to Palau that we can build upon toward developing a more resilient agri-food system. So we took a whole of government, whole of society approach within the food systems pathway. We often think about food production and food security in the context of what we grow in the farm and what we catch in the wild. But we realized that the whole value chain need to be addressed. How do you grow your food in such a way that it increases production but minimize impact to the environment? How do we grow our food, both vegetables and livestock, but have the least contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions? How do we grow our food in such a way that it is affordable to the most vulnerable members of the community? How do we grow our food so it is nutritious and safe? So it's not just about thinking with respect to producing more food, but producing it in such a way that it's safe, healthy, nutritious, and affordable, and so that it contributes to a healthy member of society. So that's sort of our vision with respect to how we're developing our resilient food systems, but not only resilient to impact of climate change, but the food build a resilient member of Palauan community. There are several efforts underway, as I mentioned, with respect to livestock. Thanks to Taiwan's ICDF, we've built a new livestock hatchery facility that will be able to produce enough pigs and chicks to be distributed to farmers. We hope by the end of 2024 that the facility will be off-grid system. Taiwan ICDF has committed to building an off-grid solar power, and so it will be a demonstration of how such technology can work in places like Palau and contribute to development of food systems toward net zero, resilient food production. We're also looking at development and expansion of milkfish hatchery. It's a species of milkfish is a species of fish that has been grown commercially in Palau, but we've had to import fries from Taiwan. So during COVID, when all our borders were closed, we could no longer import fries from Taiwan, and therefore the fish pond essentially closed because we could no longer get fries. So we have since started that rehabilitation of the pond with support from our ICDF experts in Palau. And we were trying to import milkfish, but they said we've entered into winter season, and therefore the production of milkfish has stopped in Taiwan. And so it shows that in order for us to develop a more sustainable, economically viable aquaculture industry in Palau, we also need to develop the hatchery capacity within Palau. So we're working with Taiwan ICDF in expanding an existing facility to be able to trial production, and we're aiming at a 20 million fries production that will help produce bait for the long line tuna industry, provide marketable size to feed the local population, but also allow us to export some of the fries to the Philippines. The Philippines can only produce up to 60% of the price that the farmers need within the farm. So there's a market that is available for Palau. Why we are looking at export market? Because we're looking at a business model that allows for a financially sustainable operation. Otherwise, we can't really rely and grow and depend on aquaculture for food security. So we're looking at several models by which we grow livestock, we grow farm fish, and then we can also increase vegetable and root crop and fruit production. Right now, we have somewhat semi-commercial operations in Palau. And to get to commercialization requires that we invest further within the farming sector. We have a government land that we've asked Taiwan ICDF as well as FAO to help us start a commercial demonstration farm that is focused on our age-old traditional farming approach of agroforestry, not focusing on one type of crops, but focusing on multiple crops that are resilient to pest, to weather events, but also produce food. So looking at high-yield vegetables initially so that you can get higher return to help reinvest in the farm, and then go into, let's say, fruit production. That's a much more longer-term financing return for the farm to be able to financially succeed, and therefore that we can begin to develop a commercial operation. Why commercial operation? Because we have a growing population. We have tourism visiting Palau. So we no longer just producing food for our own family. We now need to produce food for those who have no land to produce their own food and for visitors to come to Palau. So when we are looking at resilient agri-food system in Palau, we're looking at feeding ourselves, but also feeding visitors to Palau, which is a key component of Palau's economy. Palau's economy relies on over 50% of the GDP coming from tourism. So it's a big part of our economy, and we need to also feed the tourists that come to Palau. And I think I've spoken at length, so I'll end it there and allow other panelists to also chime in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for shedding some insights. And really, fundamentally, it's about how do you be able to be self-sustaining in terms of having the ability to have food systems to feed yourself and not be so reliant on the vitality of the global system when things happen, for example, like a pandemic, and then you have food shortage, for example, as a result of it. So work is very important in cultivating that. What I'm also hearing is if we invest in a bit of aquaculture in this context, it's the milkfish. You can also infer that it also helps preserve the marine ecosystem because it reduces the pressure from overfishing. And the healthier the ecosystem, the more resilient it is to climate change impacts. I think the other takeaway from here is with the changing climate, there's going to be increased pests. In Palau, for example, in particular, rain is going to increase. So vector-borne diseases, other insects are expected to be more numerous. That could impact the plant systems. And therefore, technological innovation is needed to ensure that the crops are resilient. That's some of the key takeaways that I'm taking from here. If there's any questions on the floor, I'm happy to open it up, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. Okay, it's crystal clear. Malmasulang, Minister. Thank you very much, Minister, for your insightful kind of views on what the Palau government is doing. And with that, I'd like to invite Michael to deliver his presentation. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Xavier, and thank you all for joining us this evening. And let me express my sincere gratitude to the government of Palau and to Mom Loves Taiwan for giving us the space and the platform this evening to talk about an important question, which is how do we leverage local knowledge and expertise against the demands of a global crisis. The challenges posed by climate change are daunting at the best of times. The number of people who are just a flood, a drought, or another disaster away from calamity grows each year. Between 2019 and 2021, the number of people facing hunger and food insecurity globally increased by more than 60 million people due to the combined effects of COVID-19 and climate change as agricultural yields declined. Since 2000, climate-related disasters have affected almost 4 billion people, many in the Pacific, with repairs and recovery placing nearly a $2 trillion strain on the global economy. And the climate crisis is also a water crisis, as hurricanes, floods, pollution, and droughts continue to plague global water supplies, and one estimate suggesting that 5 billion people could face water scarcity by 2050. As the climate warms, we are all bracing for new challenges that range from emergent deadly diseases to food and water insecurity. While small island countries are among the least responsible for this problem, they're exponentially more vulnerable to its consequences. For this reason, USAID is working tirelessly to seek to protect small island communities around the world from the worst impacts of the climate crisis. But it requires ambitious collective action from global leaders if we're going to be able to get there. And that is why we at USAID are extraordinarily grateful that for the opportunity that we have to leverage the resources and expertise from partners like Taiwan, the Republic of Korea, Japan, Australia, and others to help build capacity with our Pacific partners. USAID is particularly gratified to be working with Taiwan ICDF to strengthen community-level responses to natural disasters in the Pacific Islands. And while the region's climate change-driven needs are vast and complex, the effects felt by households and communities are inherently local. And yet, we see that as donor countries and organizations have mobilized to meet the challenges of global scope and scale, we too often find that our partnerships have shifted away from local communities and local solutions. Large-scale implementing partners and international organizations certainly have a role to play in addressing problems that involve regional and global scale. But our experience at USAID suggests that sustained progress flows through local leadership and local communities. And when local communities can take ownership over what, where, how, and why a project is implemented, we are much more likely to be successful. As USAID expands its partnerships in the Pacific, our emphasis is to put local actors in the lead, strengthening local systems that can draw on local and existing knowledge and expertise. In doing so, we offer our Pacific partners a development model that celebrates the Pacific way, which is grounded in centuries of local know-how and expertise, and where our role starts with listening. Through the Pacific American Fund, USAID aims to improve the quality of life in communities vulnerable to climate change and to improve access to essential services across the region. In Palau, these funds support the Palau Modaknek, and I apologize for my getting the pronunciation wrong, but the Modakni School, where members of the community learn how to be food secure in the wake of a natural disaster. In the Federated States of Micronesia and Fiji, these grants support local civil society leaders who are working to improve marine and coastal management. With community leaders at the helm, we are finding new ways to bring women and marginalized groups into the local fishing economy while working with them on best practices in biodiversity and conservation. We are also working hard to ensure that local actors are able to influence national and regional strategies designed to mitigate the effects of climate change. Recently, USAID helped facilitate community management plans in the Solomon Islands Western Province and in Micronesia's Natik and Palakir marine protected areas. One of USAID's comparative advantages is its ability to convene productive dialogue across multiple sectors and governing institutions. In a Pacific community-led dialogue on coastal-based fisheries, USAID provided local organizations an audience with heads of fisheries to provide recommendations on actions to support the formulation of a regional agenda. Our partnership with ICDF has been integral to this work. Together with ICDF, USAID is helping drought-affected communities in Fiji develop local capacities and formulate strategies to address climate change, rural poverty, food insecurity, and land degradation. We are delighted that our cooperation is expanding to include development support in health and digital technologies. I believe that our flourishing partnership sets the bar for locally led and designed climate solutions. As we elevate the role of climate-based partners and the role that they can play in addressing global challenges, we are finding increasing natural opportunities to address issues that intersect with these priorities. Through these partnerships, we are finding new and productive ways to examine how women's voices, agency, and leadership can be better supported, given that women are amongst the most vulnerable to climate impacts. Globally, women are deeply underrepresented in the development of resilience, strategies, and in decision-making processes for prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and recovery. We've also developed partnerships with the private sector to seek to further support community-level work and to build financial resilience by organizing women and youth savings clubs. For Pacific Island communities to continue to flourish in the face of adversity, they need to be empowered to choose their own path forward, consistent with their own vision, their own aspiration, and their own ambitions. USAID appreciates this opportunity to draw from reservoirs of local expertise and longstanding wisdom to implement solutions alongside community leader and with like-minded partners like ICDF. We believe that the best path forward is to treat each other equally, collaborate on solutions, and recognize that democracy, inclusivity, and pluralism offers the surest path forward to realizing our shared vision, to securing a net carbon zero future, and to ensuring that local communities have the resilience and adaptation capacity they need to be able to flourish and prosper in the years to come. Thank you.
Whew, that's a lot to take in, Michael. How do you synthesize that? But it gives a broad scope on sort of like the vision and objectives of the organization, which is great, and some of the principles that underpins the work that you do. But perhaps I can tie it down a little bit more concretely on the ground, because we have worked pretty closely in Palau. Accessing the Green Climate Fund, for those of you that don't know, that's a multilateral fund to access climate funding support to help build resiliency and also for emission reduction initiatives. And USAID was the organization that helped us submit our first readiness. And so through that first readiness, we needed to learn how to apply for these grants, or at least to have a bit of a conduit to access these grants. Hence the development of the Office of Project Management, which sits within the Ministry of Finance. And until that point, it was an empty office. But from the readiness grant, we were able to bring in people to start mobilizing and operationalizing the work. A few, fast forward a little bit, we then came to the next opportunity to apply for a readiness grant called the National Adaptation Plan. So the National Adaptation Plan is also a grant that is accessed through the Green Climate Fund. And what it does is it helps identify the risks and the vulnerabilities and then come up with some kind of interventions to ensure that you are, to increase your ability to cope and also to adapt to climate change impacts. As of last year, we've been able to get that grant approved, and now we've hired our first staff to initiate the work, and we are hiring on 2 more to do that. So that's the direct sort of, okay, what does this mean on the ground, right? And similarly to what ICDF is doing in terms of food security measure, is one of the project which was locally based, something that was stated within your statement, was to help restore some of the taro patches. Not only to restore, but to also provide tools so that these taro patches can be sustained, and maybe develop a little bit of economic activity into it. And so since those taro patches have been restored, they've been reutilized as a result of it. I can list a few more examples, but I just want to kind of tie these big principles that are really good and then sound good, but maybe also giving some concrete examples on the ground. So with that, thank you very much for your presentation, and I'd like to open it up in case you have any questions for our colleague here, Michael. Are we crystal clear here again?
We're a very compelling panel.
I guess so. Well, marinate on it. There's still going to be opportunities later to pose your questions if they do come arise. Somebody's waving. Is somebody waving? No. No, it's okay. Maybe I missaw something. So with that, I would like to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Ming Hong Yen, who will be talking about community engagement in the establishment of climate-resilient food production, nature-based solution systems, and SIDS. I would like to hand it over to you, please. Thanks.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much, Xavier, for having me. It's truly my great pleasure to be here and join this fabulous panel to talk a little bit about the food system in small island developing states, and especially to share our long-time experience on this region about how we apply the nature-based solution to support our partner countries to enhance the development of the agriculture and the food system. So I would like to take today's opportunity to share with you a couple of things. First, I will start with a very brief introduction about ICDF to give you an overall picture about who we are and what we do. And next, I will touch a little bit about the regional focus that we have in the Pacific small island developing states, especially, the SIDS is a very unique group of countries, and they are facing some specific and unique challenges. And I would like to share with you how we see those challenges. And next, I will talk about the projects and progress in target actions in the region, especially how we support our partner countries in the region to address those specific challenges that the small island developing states have. And to conclude, I will wrap up with some prospects and some potential next steps from this perspective of ICDF as an international development agency for you to take away. So ICDF is the short version of International Cooperation and Development Funds. We are the official development assistance agency of Taiwan. And our mission mandate is to support our ally countries and partner countries to enhance the social economic developments and also address the various development challenges. And as an internationally operating organization, we have 21 technical missions currently in 20 countries to carry out around 75 projects around the world. And actually within this is a very core strategy that we have as an international development agency. We have our own team on the ground. We dispatch the Taiwanese experts to work with our partner countries to make sure our projects could be very down to earth and to fit into the local context. And this also makes sure that our work and our projects could be very responsive and very aware of the local voices and the needs from our partner countries. And our strategy is to apply Taiwan's comparative advantage to respond to our partner countries' needs, and through the approach of integrating public and private sector resources. Our ultimate goal is to strengthen the cooperative partnership with our partner countries. So what do we do exactly and how we deliver? The development work is very broad and wide range. There isn't one single organization could be touching every development issues. So we focus our resources on 6 priority areas. They are agriculture, education, environment, small and medium enterprise development, public health, and information and communication technology. And what's worth mentioning is that these 6 areas are keys to Taiwan's successful transformation from a recipient country to a donor country. So this is what I have mentioned earlier, that we apply Taiwan's comparative advantage to support our partner countries. And to deliver the development results in these 6 areas, we have 4 operation tools. They are technical cooperation, education and training, lending and investments, and humanitarian assistance. So, as I've mentioned earlier, today I would like to talk a little bit about how we support the small island developing states to address development challenges. And first of all, we have to identify what kind of challenges they are facing. So for the small island developing states, according to our long-time experience, the first challenge is the environmental, of course. Most of the states are located in a relatively remote area. So the geographic remoteness induced a very huge challenge and obstacle for their developments. It caused the very high cost of transportation. And also, in environmental aspects, the climate distress and vulnerability of the environment also very challenging for the small island developing states, especially on the food production and the agriculture and the food systems. For example, the soil is relatively poor, and also the water scarcity cause a very big challenge for them. And in addition to that, the socio-economic aspects, the relatively small scale of their population cause a human capital constraint. And the very limited condition of development also cause the economic vulnerabilities. The small island developing states are usually depending on 1 or 2 major industries. And the geographically remoteness also cause the food insecurity because they are highly dependent on their food imports. And the last one is the climate risk, of course, especially in recent years. We all have witnessed the climate change has serious impacts on the developments to the island states, including the biodiversity degradation and also the climate-related disasters, global warming and sea level rising. So how we support our partner countries to address those specific challenges? We turn our eyes to the nature-based solution, which is the framework and the concept developed and initiated by the International Union of the Conservation of Nature, and currently has already been widely adopted by the international community to tackle the challenge from the climate change. So by definition and by practice, the nature-based solution is about a series of actions to protect, conserve, restore, and sustainably manage and use the ecosystem to address the climate mitigation and adaptation to enhance the biodiversity and the human well-being at the same time. There are 7 specific societal challenges that a nature-based solution are designed to address, including the food, the natural disaster, the health, urban development, etc., etc. And we should be aware of that. The nature-based solution is not suggesting to put nature or the environmental conservation the absolute priority over the human development. It's more like a coexistence and to enhance the interrelation and correlation between the protection of biodiversity and the human well-being. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the nature-based solution. One of the most important components in NBS is the indigenous knowledge, especially in the aspects of agri-food system. It is not very difficult to understand because for most of the farmers, they learn and acquire their farming and cultivation knowledge and skills from their previous generation, from their grandparents, their parents, and their peer farmers. So this practice and experience are passed on generation from generation in terms of the traditional crop and the food production. And this indigenous knowledge also represents a kind of cultural heritage in the agri-food system. It's not only about the production, it's also a way of life and a very important part of the landscape. However, the environment is changing. The climate change is impacting the environment. So the traditional knowledge, the indigenous knowledge are also facing some challenges. There are some traditional skill and experience are no longer applied to today's climate change environment. And that is right where the modern technology comes in. We need to apply some modern agricultural knowledge, for example, the variety conservation, adaptation skill, and the agri-technology research and developments to enhance and to foster and to support the indigenous knowledge to be adapted to today's climate change environment. So in the next few slides, I would like to share some project examples with you about how we apply this nature-based solution in Palau. So as Minister Victor just mentioned, agriculture is a long-standing subject that we have between Taiwan and Palau. It has been more than 4 decades. And in agricultural area, according to our experience, there is a double benefit if we support the agricultural development in Palau. One is food security. Especially in the past 3 years, we all have witnessed the importance of local production when we are facing some unexpected challenges, outside challenges such as COVID-19 lockdown, the climate change, and the conflict. And the other benefits that we have in agricultural development projects is the nutrition enhancements. As we know, the non-communicable diseases is also one of the challenges that cities are facing right now. And in this agricultural area, I would like to share one case that we use the nature-based solution in the vegetable and the fruit production, which is the taro production. As we know, taro plays a very important social role in Austronesian society. It's not only a main food, but also plays an important role in the social exchange system. A basket of taro represents friendship and the emotional support to the Austronesian society. And in addition to that social-cultural aspect, taro fields also plays a natural filtering system, because in the context of climate change, there are more and more strong rainfall and the changing model of precipitation. And when the strong rainfall comes, it will wash away those dirt and the soil in the mountain and brush it into the ocean. And this dirt and soil will affect it and impact the coral reef system. But the taro fields, it's a very good environmental filtering system. It could prevent the running off of the sediments from the mountain and keep the coastal ecosystem health and positive to the coral reef system. And the second area that we have in Palau is the aquaculture. I think the Minister Victor just mentioned. It's in direct response to the blue economy policy of the Palau government. And in this aquaculture project, I would like to bring your attention to one of the species that we raise in our aquaculture station, which is the sea cucumber. And the sea cucumber is considered as the marine cleaner, is the marine scavenger, because it could play a positive role to purify the water quality of the coastal area and to absorb quite amount of the coral reef sand. And this is very important for a health coral reef system in the coastal area, and also maintain a balanced development of the coral reef and coastal area ecosystem. And as we know, the coral reef is the rainforest in the ocean, and it is a very important carbon sink nowadays. So if we can protect more coral reef, it will function more positive to the climate and the carbon mitigation. And the third area is the livestock. And again, the livestock also have a very important social meaning and social value in the Austronesian societies. And just like Minister Victor just mentions, we introduce the environmental friendly and the eco methodology to raise the livestock to reduce the emission of the methane and to reduce the negative impact to the local environment. To summarize these three projects that we have in Palau, we put the local production at the core, at the center of our engagements in Palau. And this is actually right where the beauty and the true value that agriculture has, because the primary function of the agriculture is the production. Still, we have to feed people, we have to satisfy people's needs in terms of nutrition. So this is the primary function of the agriculture have. But agriculture is also a lifestyle, a way of living. It's relating to the local community, and it's also relating to the cultural heritage from generation to generation. And the third aspect of the agriculture production is about the ecology, because agriculture is basically to transform the natural resources to the foods that's human needs. So if we can to protect agriculture with the natural-based solution, it will to create a positive benefits for the whole community and the local citizens. So to conclude my presentation, I would like to bring three aspects that we think in the future will be very important to support these small island developing states to thrive. The first one is resilience, of course, especially when facing the changing environment. The resilience is very urgent and for the human being thriving. And in Taiwan ICDF experience, the human capital development and the capacity building will be very crucial to enhance the resilience for the states. And the second part is the ocean. Despite of those uncertain benefits of the blue carbon and the carbon credits, there is no doubt that ocean will play a crucial role in the climate action and also the carbon mitigation in the future. And we have already heard a lot about that small island developing states are actually big ocean states. So how to support the states to develop those ocean resources to mitigate the climate negative impacts will be very crucial for the future. And the last one is the climate adaptation. Although the climate change, the fundamental tool is the mitigation, but the adaptation is about the daily life that these small island developing states are facing right now. And especially in this COP28, there are already some voices that we are not talking about 1.5 degrees. We are not even talking about the 2 degrees. Maybe we have to talk about the 2.5 degrees. So maybe in the future, the adaptation will play a more and more important role in the future to mitigate the impacts of climate change. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ming Hong. Thank you for the support that's been provided to the partner countries and also to Palau. Something very interesting in terms of, and it looks like it might have been, and correct me if I understood it, or please clarify or please verify rather, if I understood it correctly. So basically the formula that helped kind of with the development of Taiwan was through the improvement of agriculture, education, environment, small, medium enterprise development, public health, and the development of ICT, which is basically related to computers. And you guys are very well known, by the way, for your chips. For those that are into tech, there's only 2 top tech companies. One is ASML, and the other one is TSMC, and that's basically from a global level, sort of the leverage of Taiwan. It's like its champion. So it's really interesting that. Sorry, I had my optics there because I'm a little bit nerdy when it comes to technology, but in terms of that formula, it seems like Taiwan is applying the same formula of support to its partners for development support. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Okay, great. And rather than summarize, I wanted to have a bit of a dialogue. Because of your unique situation with technology, let's just put it that way. And in the past, I want to say year, the uptake of interest in AI, artificial intelligence, I'm hearing it in a lot of corners. I'm hearing it in corner spaces within negotiations. It's been applied in so many different ways. But I guess in this context, in the context of climate change, has there been any explorations of, say, utilizing AI tools for improving food systems? Is that something that ICDF is involved in, or maybe Taiwan as a whole for those government representatives that might be here?
Yes, we do exploring the possibility of using the technology to, for example, the climate smart agriculture CSA. For example, in the Central America and in the Latin America and the Caribbean, we have a couple of projects of using ICT technology and the data science to tackle the challenge coming from climate change. But as for our experience in the small island developing states, I'm not saying that the technology is not useful for the small island developing states, but the nature-based solution may be more appropriate. It's a kind of appropriate knowledge, but still there is also some space and rooms for the application of technology in the small island developing states.
Very interesting, because sorry, I don't mean to, because it's really ultimately about building resilience. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation, actually it was yesterday, on applying the technology to do climate assessments. So you then become informed of the impacts through those climate assessments. The traditional tools using sensors and things like that, they're all good and dandy, but AI can amplify that and amplify that at scale. So the idea is that you are then informed, right? But what you're saying is using that information and then utilizing these technologies to be a little bit more surgical and strategic and have a little bit of higher accuracy in the way that you build resilience. Is that my understanding in the approach that you're talking about?
Yeah, just like one of my slides presents, we have to combine the modern technology and the indigenous knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, just combines and find a very good interrelation between these two components.
No, sure. Not in isolation, but in combination.
Yes.
But thank you very much indeed for your very insightful presentation. With that, I'd like to invite our next guest speaker. Can I just use your first name if that's okay? Ellen, who will be talking about indigenous knowledge and self-determination of Taiwan indigenous peoples in the pursuit of climate justice. I'd like to hand over the floor to you. Thanks.
Thank you, moderator, for your endeavor for pronouncing my name. Hello, everyone. Thank you for after the long day and come to this place to hear me talk story about my people. So I am Aleng Gazangilan. Aleng is my first name, and Gazangilan is actually not my last name. It's actually a name of my house. So we believe the house has a spirit, and we give it a name. Whoever lives under that roof will carry the house name. So I belong to Baiwan people. I'm a daughter of Juruguay and Tanabagong community. I now study in University of Hawaii William Richardson Law School with focus on environmental law and indigenous people's rights. So this is my outline. I'm going to share two stories. One of it is Metis Veda's challenge of the just transition and indigenous people's self-determination. And the second one is to find a way forward to engage the traditional knowledge into the decision-making process when we're facing the climate change. So this beautiful wetland, actually it's a lake and wetland. It's called Ganaluvang. It's the traditional and sacred territory of Binuyumayan people in Kadatipu community. It is also home to 170 species of plants and more than 200 species of wildlife. Among them, 47 are protected species. It was listed as an important bird area by BirdLife International, this organization. However, it is not listed as a national protected wetland in our country. So when a developer can, it doesn't have to go through the environmental impact assessment when it comes to land development. So what happened is I think it's back in 2013 or 14, the Taiwan County planned to establish a solar power plant at this place. The circle part is the designated site of the power plant, of the solar power plant, I'm sorry. The county government contract this project with an energy company named Vena Energy. I'm not going to name the country behind this behind this company, but it's an international company that has associated with has a branch in Taiwan. So according to Indigenous Peoples Basic Law, Article 21, Vena Energy should initiate the consultation process with Gadadipu community to have Indigenous peoples consent. However, the company asked the community to convene a tribal meeting for several times just to obtain Indigenous people's consent. It's just like taking the bus. But the community firmly refused to hold a meeting unless Vena Energy company provided more information and reports in details. So in 2018, because the deadline of the contract is approaching, the government held a tribal meeting on behalf of the Gadadipu community. And this is allowed according to the Indigenous Peoples Informed Consent and Participation Regulation that is delegated by the Indigenous Peoples Basic Law. So it is really a peculiar situation. And the voting ended up with 187 votes in favor and 173 votes against the solar power plant. It just 14 votes difference. And the Ministry of Economy thus issued the energy development permit to Vena Energy Company according to the result from the vote. However, the voting process was extremely controversial because you can think about it. The government forced upon this tribal meeting on Indigenous peoples, and then there were even non-community members in the vote. There are just people from moving to that community from other villages. So it creates a lot of controversy. So Lahan, those in the picture, the three person in the picture, the one holding, reading the statement is one of the biggest traditional leader. They have three traditional leaders. In the language, it's called Lahan. They filed a petition asking the court to annul the permit. And in 2022, yes, after 4 years of battling in courts, the Taipei High Administrative Court ruled in favor of Gadadipu community. The court pointed out that the Ministry of Economy should examine the validity of the consultation process. The court further stated that the Indigenous Peoples Informed Consent and Participation Regulation has already existed the authority that delegated by Indigenous Peoples Basic Law, which is safeguard the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. So the voting is invalid, and so is the permit. Finally, what happened to the story? The developer had to terminate the contract with the county government. And this case shows that the absurd consultation process, lacking an Indigenous decision-making mechanism, and a violation of free, prior, and informed consent principle. Although the consultation process may take time, but without legitimate free, prior, and informed consent, it just might cost you more time and money in court. So how can we do and how do we move forward to embody the indigenous decision making? What is indigenous knowledge in the process? So the next story I'm going to share the Vuvu Alung's, how she demonstrates the power, the sovereignty of indigenous people. So Vuvu means grandmothers and or grandfathers in my Taiwan language. I have the privilege to share the same name with this traditional leader. So in 2009, Typhoon Morocco struck Taiwan with catastrophic damage, killing 673 people, leaving 26 people missing, and 10,000 people displaced. So this is the landscape after the disaster. So Vuvu Alung's village and among other two villages, three of them were one of the effective indigenous community. So Vuvu Alung is the traditional leader of Magazaya Zaya. There are three villages. One is Magazaya Zaya and Talavan, belonging to Pawan people, and one is Kutapuan from Lukai people. And the government designated, they choose Maja farm, which belongs to Vuvu Alung's traditional land. She's a traditional caretaker of the land. The traditional name of the place is not Maja farm, it's called Inali, meaning the place where everybody comes and goes together. Vuvu Alung was furious that three indigenous communities were not informed before the decision being made by the government. And she, as the traditional owner of the Inali, she stepped out. The county government finally held a negotiation meeting with three affected communities to obtain the permission from Vuvu Alung and discuss the arrangement of the three communities in that in the relocation process. In this meeting, you can see there's government officials sitting in the corner, and Vuvu Alung is actually dressing down those people by saying, I'm just gonna share what she said. It's really, like she said, you may think this part of land belongs to the government, but it is not. This land belongs to the leader of Magazaya Zaya. Our brother Masidid community has also once formed here. I am a member of Parijalan's descendants. I am the descendant. I am also your grandmother. I belong to the house of Dalimalau, which is the house of Parijalan's leader. And my grandfather is Ngelengel. Why is this important? Each indigenous community has its own boundaries, and we don't occupy someone else's land just because we want to. Government officials do not choose this side on my land recklessly. You shouldn't do that. Why Vuvu Alung has to counting and citing her family? Because that is the component that makes her legitimate to state that she is the traditional owner by the genealogy she shared. So as the Pawan people, our naming system connects us to the family, the community, and the land. Just like my name, Alung is I am a descendant of Tanavagong and Juruguay community, and Alung, this name is given from a family tree. So there is an actual ancestor called Alung, looking down from the sky, from the heaven for us. And Lia Gazangilan, Lia means from Gazangilan, this house. So it states where I'm from and what is my capacity, what my position is, and what's the responsibility I carry. So tracing back to my community, everybody knows your genealogy and which land we should take care of. So during this process, Vuvo Alung and other traditional leaders were able to know everyone's name, territory, and position. Through the method called Pinalui Liasvalitan, it's a process that reciting the ancestors' name from generation to generation. As a Vusang, Vusang means the firstborn child. And Mama Zangila means traditional leader in our language. And as a traditional leader, she's a Buvalong, means mind worker, and Bulima, Lima means hand or five. So Bulima means physical worker. As a mind worker, she confirmed this everybody's legitimacy and who has a standing to sitting on the table. When calling the name, it also confirmed the kinship relationship with the families of the traditional leaders. Pinalaui Nya Sabalitan is a unique negotiation model. While the living recites the name of the ancestors to obtain acknowledgement, as well as affirm, just as I mentioned before, the legitimacy of the people sitting here. So the post-disaster relocation process really demonstrated how Baiwan people use the traditional social systems and indigenous decision-making mechanism to mitigate the severity of natural disasters. Policymakers should acknowledge the discussion and opinions generated through traditional decision mechanism and uphold indigenous sovereignty during the policy-making process. This is the starting point for resolving conflict between different governments and knowledge systems. Moreover, as Baiwan's name system carries local environmental knowledge and cross-community territorial politics passed down through generation, when formulating disaster adaptation plans, this knowledge is an indispensable component. So as I guess I'm trying to say is that to protect the self-determination, you protect the traditional knowledge and the land and ecosystem that indigenous peoples taking care of. We have the long interactive relationship with the natural environment. We often rely on cultural practice, traditional decision-making mechanism to guide our community when how to adapting the climate change and how to anticipate what to anticipate in the future. So it is essential to respect the culture of the affected indigenous community. Without the full and effective engagement and leadership of indigenous people, it is impossible to develop precise and effective plans for disaster risk reduction. So I'm going to end my presentation with this sentence. If there will be no climate justice without indigenous people's justice. And without full and meaningful participation in that decision-making process, there will not be indigenous people justice in this climate change mitigation. So I'm going to end with that. Thank you for your kind attention. Masalu, and thank you. I'm looking forward for further work with you. Here is my contact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. That was a very powerful presentation. I've just been informed that we have about 15 minutes, but I wanted to have a bit of a conversation with you, but we didn't want to miss out on our last presenter, so maybe we'll go to our last presenter, and if we have enough time, we can do a bit of Q&A. So thanks. Maybe just to introduce real quick the topic to be discussed. It would be challenge of climate change, human rights, and traditional knowledge application of Taiwan's indigenous peoples by Ai-Chan. So I hand over the floor to you. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thanks, moderator. Okay, it's my pleasure to share something we're thinking from Taiwan. Okay, here is our organization charter written in 1984. From that time, the issue of environmental education, climate change, biodiversity, and forest conservation issue were our highlight. But recently, we further focus on environmental law and climate justice and the indigenous people issue. So let me briefly introduce about something about Taiwan. Taiwan is a mountainous island with a high forest coverage. Most of the indigenous people live near forests and with nature culture. Most of their traditional territories are highly overlapped with the forest area. So if we want to talk about the climate change in Taiwan, we must take an honestly look at the situation of indigenous people and their role in the climate area. Okay, when we talk about the indigenous people and climate change, we can discuss it from these two perspectives. Of course, the indigenous people, they can contribute their traditional ecological knowledge, but they also require resource and funding. However, both approaches face challenge in Taiwan. To be honest, we always refer to traditional knowledge in general, but know very little about the detail of traditional knowledge. Even we know that the indigenous people region occupy more than half of Taiwan, and most of natural resources are here, but we still didn't take it so seriously. In past year and this year, commissioned by the Taiwan Climate Change Agency, the EQPF went to 12 elementary schools focusing on indigenous people's education, and we reached more than 300 teachers. But we found that due to the influence of the long-term mainstream knowledge system, the indigenous people's traditional knowledge system have been broken and lost. In such a situation, it is very challenging to expect the indigenous people to be as a contributor. Okay, and the other aspect, the Taiwan most important climate policy also didn't provide the finance mechanism to indigenous people. Even the climate change and the climate finance key strategy didn't mention it. However, we all know that indigenous people issue can be integrated into many fields, like just transit, green finance, green lifestyle, carbon sink, and carbon-free key strategy at all. So we must have an open mind to create the mechanism for indigenous people participate at all levels. Fortunately, in last year, Taiwan adopted its first national human rights action plan, to including the chapter on climate change and human rights, which including action item 127, encourage the climate change and human rights education. And the item 123 and 124 also try to propose the climate change and human rights guidelines, including considered for indigenous people. So this will be our momentum of change in Taiwan. So therefore, we recommend that the Taiwan's Indigenous People Council cannot just focus on cultural rights, but needs to think about and get involved in the climate issue. Cross-department cooperation is important. Please incorporate perspectives such as right to development and the right to healthy environment. And the climate change law also need to respond to the need of the indigenous people and create financial legal mechanism. I still remember in the last year, in the same side event, we try to say that a start to setting the Indigenous People Climate Adaptation Fund as a first step to handle and to act for this issue. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And I think, so what we're hearing is a little bit of food security, a little bit of partnerships to be developed, established in order to enhance that. But I guess in a broader scale, in the context of climate change, that there is respect that's embedded within that, so that we can ensure appropriate measures are put in place that fits for purpose and ensures that everybody is accounted for, and well-being is ensured. That pretty much is kind of like my summary of the presentations today. How much time do we have? 8 minutes. And I'd like to steer my attention back to you because in the photo you had mentioned the traditional leader, and it was a female. Can you give a bit of a background on that?
Sure. So, like in my culture, a firstborn child, no matter female or male, will be the lead, will be the one to carry the whole family, and it's inherited by blood. Yes. And what else would you like to know about in that regard?
So is it matrilineal society or?
Not really. We have pretty much equal. Like as our elders say, whoever first to see the sun will inherit the family. Yes. So it's very fair. It's chosen by the ancestors.
Oh wow.
Yes.
How does that work?
So yeah, I guess our ancestor is wise.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And then the names. I'm just trying to make comparisons because, as Indigenous Palauans
Yes.
as well. And the names, how is it traced? Is it traced through the female lineage, the male lineage, both ways? So that way you can identify kind of your roots, right? Because you're saying even your ancestors that have gone before you, they're now in the heavens, but their names have been inherited to those that are living today.
I mean, how we choose our name? How is it?
Yeah, like how does it, because you were saying the elderly, the traditional leader
Yes.
was speaking to her rights, and she was talking about the family tree,
Yes.
and how you can pinpoint their rights to the land based on that family tree, based on the name that's attached to that land.
Mm-hmm.
And so how does that work in terms of the names? Is it inherited therefore through the women's side or through the father's side?
Oh, okay, I see your point. Well, if I am okay, right? For example, I am for example, I am the firstborn child. So once I got married, the man has to follow, not marry into, but we live together in my house, the house, Kazangilan house, and our kids our first kids, every kids, they will inherit the name of our house. So the firstborn child is, for example, like Gulele Lia Kazangilan, that's his name. And the second-born child, if he or she got married, the one must choose another name of the house instead of staying in. So what my sibling, my little sister, my little brother, when they got married, they are not, they have to move out and establish a new house, new family, and they will have a new name of the house. So it changed. It's interesting, right? Because it's not the last time you always carry around. So you will have to trace, okay, who is from the family? So it's not like the last time you're following with. So it's kind of break the type of that, following father's side or mother's side name. It doesn't work like that.
Interesting.
Yes, it work beyond that.
I think that begs for another side conversation. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, we can talk about it later. Yes.
I am mindful of the time. Are there any questions, comments from the floor? And if not, I think we're right on time to end it here. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists.
Likewise, I look forward to seeing you.
在沙漠。
要带药。